I think we'll go ahead and get started. It's a couple minutes after 12. I want to welcome you. It's great to see all the faces really turning out to get an update on where we're at with the Translational Medicine Institute. I think I know most of you, but for the few faces I don't recognize, I'm Dave Frisbie, and I'm the interim director of operations for the TMI, so I've had the pleasure of kind of trying to get this building out of the ground and working with a lot of great people in designing the program and where we have been historically and where we're at and our plan for the future. So that's the goal. Dr. Jensen was nice enough to provide the drinks and other things and the opportunity to message to all of you guys on where we're going. There's certainly a lot of questions about what that big building is. So what I wanted to do briefly was take a little bit of a snapshot in time starting in 2013, which is where the first introduction went to, and then where we see 2019 ending up, and obviously we have many things going past that, but that's going to be our timeline for today. I'm going to go through the basics of the building, and then in the end, one of the pillars, as you'll see, will be the educational pillar, and Dr. Tweed is going to do that presentation for us as he's heading that up. So I've broken today's presentation down into three basic parts along the timeline. Again, 2013, we started with the idea in Genesis, which I'll get into. We needed to raise the money, sum total around that. So we kind of have a funding segment. Once the funding was complete, we had to do a more in-depth dive into the organization, strategic planning, and the operational planning is something that is yet coming, but you can imagine some of this stuff has to come before the building construction, which has a finite end, and we'll go through that as a separate entity as well. So if we dive into the funding side of it, the funding really all started with Mindy's story and her passion around sports medicine and believing that CSU, and specifically the ORC, was a place that she wanted to work. One of her clients, John and Leslie Malone, had shown interest in supporting her in that endeavor. And one of the things that came out of our first meeting, which was by introduction from Mindy, was the Malone's interest in stem cells. So we gave them a 10-minute presentation on the ORC history, a 10-minute presentation on the sports medicine program, obviously, and then 10 minutes on our stem cell program, which ended up turning into John Malone wanting to come up and spending an hour with us on another presentation, as he said, diving into the data. So we actually wanted to see that data, and Wayne reflects that that's the first donor we've ever had that made that request. Interesting. That was a 2.5-hour meeting, so he had a lot of great questions, and at the end of it, he liked the vision that we had put forward and wanted to see a more formal proposal and was considering being a lead donor. That led into another presentation in March where we had a focus group that we had gotten together, talked a little bit about what the building might look like, what the program would look like, and he committed to a lead gift, and then that was the press release, as you can see here. It was some months later in 2014, but that started the whole process. There was $32.5 million towards the building, which ended up being a $65 million building, and as you'll see, $10 million was in operational and research support. So that's how that was broken up. It provided a challenge for us, though. He basically gave us half the money, which left us with the other half that we needed to get in matching funds. On the plane ride home, Tony Frank was with us, and he made the first pledge of $10 million. So that started us getting down. We ended up getting another $2.5 million from the university, and then many of you have seen the press release that came out in 2016 Abigail Kalana-Nakoa, one of Wayne's longtime clients, provided another $20 million match or gift. And we'll remember it started as an anonymous gift before that was released. So we knew in about 2.5 years that we had gotten all of the money for the building. So where did that leave us? Well, we've been able to leverage some new faculty positions for South Campus. So we have the personnel bubble, we have the building bubble, and then, as I mentioned, the research and operating funds as kind of the new components that we're bringing together. So 6 faculty positions that were funded were part of another piece of what the university brought forward over and above the $12.5 million, and one of the 3 directors that we envisioned was funded. The building at this point then is fully funded, so the Translational Medicine Institute building itself is $65 million. The rest of the project with infrastructure and the research, the equine research barn that's going up as well, brings the total of the project to $77.4 million. So that's the sum total. And as I said, over the first 5 years, we have a $10 million budget for operation and research to work with. So those are the new components. So that's kind of the money side of it, and I want to take a dive now into the building and kind of go through that timeline for you. As I already mentioned, we had to start with deciding what the program was going to look like, and then, of course, what the building needed to be to work around that particular program. To do that, we tried to be very inclusive across campus, all the way from Central Campus down to end users on South Campus. And you can see the list. It gets a little bit bigger. I'll bring that up so you can see the people that participated in those first 2-day workshops. And that's really where the heavy lifting began. From there, we had a program plan. We had to get that approved by the Board of Governors, and CSU's first public-private partnership began. What they do is they issue an RFP, so a request for proposal. We had 16 different firms that applied to that RFP, and we whittled that down to 4, and those 4 had various on-campus interviews that we went through. We were able to see different concepts, and you can see the different concepts that we were presented with early on for what the building might look like. And then finally, as you can imagine, we got down to one partner that we wanted to go with. And the lead developer is Tetrad. I've got the people's names from the different groups that are up there. Clark Anderson partner is the architect, and J.E. Dunn is the builder. So this is kind of the triad of what's going on. You can imagine with a 130,000 square foot building, there were a couple of meetings that did occur and are occurring. We've got a great group of people. I certainly have learned a lot of new terms as far as building goes. And for those of you that haven't seen the final rendition of what Tetrad and their group brought together, the lower left-hand corner represents what the building will look like in the end. So I put the flat drawings of the different floors. I've mentioned the size of the building. It's spread over 3 floors. And obviously, it's going to take a while to dive into these, but I just want to give you a high overview of how the building is set up. We'll do a few fly-throughs so you can get an idea of what it will look like inside. This is the footprint of the first floor, which is really dedicated to the animal space. As you can imagine, we want all of that to be on the first floor. North is actually north in this picture, so we're looking at the south side. We can see there's a Main Street concept that's coming through, and the south part of the Main Street is around the education piece, as well as the live animal and or cadaver labs, and Dr. Tweed's going to talk more about the surgical teaching lab and the other side of it, but that's what's in that south section. In the north side of it, this is more the individual live animal piece. In this location, we have 4 individual surgery suites. We happen to have an equine standing procedures labs that are up there, and all of the imaging components are in this section, again on that first floor north side. As we move up to the second floor then, This is where the wet lab space is. So to give you an idea of magnitude, there's about 14,000 square feet of wet lab space, and I'll talk a little bit more about the detail. We've got faculty offices that are mainly located on the west-facing part of the building on the second floor. And then finally, the third floor is really dedicated to the larger format educational side of it, with a banquet hall as well as an auditorium. And then the administrative offices are squirreled away up in the corner on that third floor. So I want to share with you a fly-through. Oops, I might want to share with that. See if I can get this guy okay. The button is really small. Let's see. There we go. Okay, so we're looking at the front of the building. As we look to the right, that's the DMC, and as we look left or to the north, that's going to be the ORC, just putting it in reference for you. When we're looking at the front of the building, this whole front side is going to be a location with a food area. So E-Ties, for those of you that have been in DIA, is going to be the food vendor or the cafe. So we will have fresh salads, breakfast, and I'm told very good coffee, which I'm looking forward to. This is panning into the immersive classroom, which is one of the things on the first floor on the south side. It seats about 40 people. This is a tiered classroom that goes along with the surgical teaching area. There'll be two-way communication with this room and other aspects, specifically the other ORs, if we want to pipe that information in and have those types of conversations. This is one of the surgery rooms, so it acts as a conference room as well as an observation room, so we can actually see right into the surgery area, and the information being gained or produced in that can be put into that room. This is a rendition of the standing equine procedures area, as well as the equine induction room. Two of the surgery rooms will be capable of handling equine patients. This is the 3 Tesla MRI, which is a central piece, obviously, of the imaging area. There'll also be CT, radiology, and ultrasound. We've now moved up to the second floor, and as I mentioned, there's about 14,000 square feet of wet lab space. There's 2 clean rooms where we can do GMP or create clinical grade material, and then 4 different culture rooms, and then the other lab space that would support that. Throughout the entire building, as you'll see as they're moving through, again, this is still on second floor, they have what's called innovation space. So space where people can get together and have some collaborative discussions. And there's a significant amount of that throughout the building. This is now looking more towards the east. And then we're finally up on the 3rd floor. There's a 150-seat auditorium that's up there, again, with the ability to bring things in from the surgery room or anywhere else in the building, as well as broadcast these things across the internet. The rest of the 3rd floor I mentioned is kind of around administration for the most part. We're going to look into the 24-seat boardroom. The entrepreneurial or the commercialization side of what goes on in the TMI will be centered in this particular area. So this is just a few different looks. You can see it's got a relatively spectacular view out into the foothills. The last thing that's on our fly-through from large rooms is the 300-seat banquet hall. So we'll be able to serve food there. There's a catering or holding kitchen to be able to get the food up on the 3rd floor. We'll also be able to do hotel-type seating as well, or presentations, and then ending up with another place to get together on the terrace and the home for the ORC Mcllwraith machine, which is a somewhat important thing. So that kind of gives you an idea of what things are going to look like. The first milestone that we hit in the building is the groundbreaking, and there was about 150 people showed up for that, which was great. It was in June of 2017. Tony Frank led it off with one of his inspirational speeches. Following that, Wayne did a very heartfelt talk about accepting the naming of this building. As I think everybody probably knows, it will be the C. Wayne Mcllwraith Translational Medicine Institute. And then finally it ended with John Malone giving a few words and toasting the dedication of that building to Wayne. There was the traditional turn dirt over in a box, which was an interesting concept for me. It's a different way of doing groundbreaking, but and then the part that I liked the most was the first drilled pier. So this is the type of foundation, if you will. And it's a little bit hard to see, but you can see Wayne and Nancy Mcllwraith throwing a horseshoe in there. Obviously that's for good luck, and there's a very interesting story about that particular shoe and that particular horse in the university that I'll let Wayne fill in the blanks on that. Lindsay was kind enough to, we have a time-lapse camera, so this takes you through kind of site preparation up until about 2 weeks ago when we pulled the video off, but it gives you an idea of how fast this thing goes. So we've got slab on grade, we start putting in structural steel, starting closing the building, and as you can see today, they're doing what they call glazing installation, which is code for windows. But anyways, it's going up quite fast, and interestingly enough, still on schedule. So what is the schedule? That's the next piece. So building opening is scheduled for the end of November 2018. So it's actually really quite close. I tell people December 1st, it just makes it a little easier. But as I said, thus far they are in fact on schedule. So that kind of brings us to the final milestone that we're planning, and that's for a grand opening. We're going to wait for the weather to be a little bit nicer, so spring of 2019 is when we're looking for that particular milestone event to end. So that kind of takes us through the construction or where we're at today. I want to go into the program next. So this was a process that was really quite interesting. There's a lot of nomenclature, and I'm not sure that I still have it all down, but it's a process that Cindy Anderson has helped guide us through, and it really started with the formation of an advisory group, and I'll get into that, and you can see the different aspects that I'm going to move through with, and it ends with continued strategic planning, i.e., I think it never ends. Having said that, so I talked about the workshop participants, and I said I would give you a little bit bigger font so you could see the people that were kind enough to submit to these workshops. It really was the heavy lifting. These are the people that helped with what we were going to do, our vision, mission, values. From that, at the end of those workshops, we had defined the different areas that were going to participate in the building, at least at a high level, and then we chose people to represent different aspects of it ongoing, and that's the formation of the steering committee or interim steering committee that you see on the bottom. There's so much thanks that goes out to these people because they're really the group that is changing and making the face of what the TMI will be. Everybody loves these things, right? Everybody loves mission and vision statements. I say that tongue-in-cheek. It really does help drive where we're going and lets us check in all of the time. You can see the vision statement that we've come up with here, and it's really to innovate medical discovery paradigms, leveraging the nature's healing capacity. And you can see some of the things reflected in the mission statement of what that really breaks into, and that's the building purposes around biologic therapies and the opportunities, which is another way of saying the learning and the education component to really have impact on not only veterinary patients, but human patients as well. Our belief is we can leverage naturally occurring disease in our veterinary patients to help the humans that go along with those animals as well.
We know we need a lot of diverse collaboration, bringing new ideas in, as well as the ability to bring the impact faster to the patient. And that's where the entrepreneurial models and optimizing the innovation timelines come in. We also worked on our values, and there's a lot of sub-headings that go along with that, and much of this will be posted on our website, and the link is at the end, so I'm not going to hit all of those, but it certainly will be there for you to look at in more depth. So the other thing that came out of it is that we had 3 primary pillars that we were going to be working in. One is research, the next is commercialization. We've been messaging that as entrepreneurial advancement, but you get the idea. It's really commercializing ideas, and then at the end, educating around those ideas. I'm a very example-oriented person, so I kind of want to take you through what I would see as the perfect scenario. Is somebody comes up with an idea, and there's in vitro or wet lab testing around that idea, and with success, it would then move into preclinical assessment. Another way of saying that is an animal model of some form. And of course, there's a huge variety of animal models that are available on South Campus, all the way from mice to horses, and we've seen various groups do this effectively. If the idea has success in that platform, the ability to move into naturally occurring disease is obviously here with the Veterinary Teaching Hospital, and that's the veterinary clinical trials bubble. With success there, then there's commercialization that would come out of that, and analogous disease processes being looked at with human clinical trials, so we can get a triad of helping not only the veterinary patients, but the human patients as well. In each one of these bubbles, there's educational opportunities. How do we do the basic research? How do we do the preclinical trials? How are the veterinary trials done? Where does it work the best? And the same in human. And that's the idea of the educational pillar. We can take this in a more substantial type of an example that's near and dear to my heart. We had some ideas around stem cells that we learned. In fact, there was a project in 2003 that suggested if you take the meniscus out and you put stem cells back in place, free in the joint, you can regenerate 70% of the medial meniscus. With that, we did some basic science testing around that and realized what the best source of stem cells were. We then went into some preclinical assessment. We've done veterinary trials. Those being successful, we spun out a company to commercialize it, and we're now working for the human trials to get done. Again, that would be a successful outcome, and we've been able to hold courses and educate around that. So that's kind of an idea of where that came from. The next thing that happens after you get your pillars identified, it's really the purpose are the pillars and then the audience that you serve. And many people say, who's going to be in the building? Who are you trying to reach? The primary purpose, you can see, are just the three pillars: research, commercialization, and education. And across the top, it's who do you serve? We've broken it down into the basic science researchers, if you will, and those researchers, this is the box that would make the most sense, and I'm not going to go through each one of those, but there's commercialization that needs to go on, and education, as I've already alluded to. The next box over are the healthcare practitioners, so these are the vets and the MDs, meaning those people have patients that they want to impact. They also have ideas that they want to interface with researchers and commercialize. So again, we'll post all of this to the website so you can read through it. Ultimately, what most of us are trying to do is have impact on our patients and or our community. Lastly, not surprisingly, what we do on South Campus is a lot of postgraduate education. The students are there, but we're also incorporating undergraduate learning experiences in all three of those pillars. From there, we've got some operating or foundational elements that are things that require not only resources, but attention throughout time. And those are around facilities, organizational development, financial practices, marketing and relationship building, and again, the business development in the end. You can imagine one of the things that we struggle with, everybody tells you never put up an org chart. I've learned why that is now. We've gone through multiple iterations of organizational charts and boxes. You're not meant to read these, but rather to say that it's been thoughtfully gone through with a lot of input from not only the participants of the workshop, but the steering committee as well. This is kind of where we've landed. Now, it's not complete and it doesn't have everything on there. You'll see Dave Tweet will have one for just the educational pillar. But you can see the way we've arranged it right now is to have an administrative unit. And what does that mean? It really means that those are the people that are working full-time for the TMI and trying to keep the ship going down the right path. Not surprisingly, we have a director and then a director of operations, so the person that gets things done on a daily basis. And then each one of the three pillars has someone that will be directing it. And those will be the people that will really be doing the inward as well as outward facing work. The fiscal years is when we believe we're going to bring those on board. Dave Tweed is the interim associate director for education, so he's obviously on board. That's FY19. The associate director for business development, meaning who's going to be the person when you have a good idea that's going to help you on how you commercialize it and how you get it through the pipeline. That person, we've got 48 applicants that have applied, and that is closed, and Dr. Tweed is heading that search. So we're in process of bringing that person on board, and then finally the person that will help from an outward-facing direction with research and interfacing with the medical community and industry, we're hoping to bring on board in FY19. So that administrative unit will continue, in our belief, to interface with the steering committee, which will be the end users representing all the different aspects of things that are going on in the TMI to provide input to that group. Other expected positions I have down on the right-hand side. We have an offer out for a bioengineer. That particular search was headed up by the mechanical engineering group. We believe we'll be bringing on a biostatistician in this next year, FY19. That search will go through the Department of Statistics. And then finally, longer term, in the final year of hiring people, we'll be looking for help in the regulatory affairs space and then in the imaging or surgery location, i.e. we have one more faculty position to fill at that point. The advisory board is the second piece that you see up there. That's the outward-facing group. That's how we get the input from the rest of the world, if you will. The entrepreneurial board will be helping onboarding from a financial side, philanthropic, as well as evaluating the commercialization potential of the different ideas that are in the TMI. That board will be chaired by Tony Frank and John Malone, and they're going to populate that in about 2 or 3 months. The scientific board, as the name implies, will be a group of outward scientists that will help evaluate the scientific content of the things passing through the TMI as well. I know that's a pretty quick look through it, but that at least gives you a window into what we're thinking. I said the strategic planning process will continue. That's not a big surprise. The things that we can check the box on are what's completed. Everybody loves their strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat charts, and I say that tongue-in-cheek. But the SWOT analysis, we've been able to go through that. Business model canvas gives us a big look at how we can make money and or break even. And then market analysis. We have had an outside market analysis that we've gone through, and we have that information in our pocket. Things that we're currently working on are the inclusion criteria, meaning how do we down the road look at space and space utilization within the TMI, an internal communication plan, which you're experiencing in part today. Dave is going to walk us through the continuing education side of it, and we're with Cindy Anderson looking at how we define our culture, which we hope to be a new and exciting thing in the TMI. You can imagine as the building becomes closer and we hit the 6-month time point, we're going to start turning more to operational planning and how do we onboard people and what does that look like. The business development person will be on board by then, so we'll start working on that, and then the ongoing work in the culture side of it. We'll be happy to take questions. I'm going to let Dave start on the educational side of the world, and then we'll take questions at the end.
Okay. Well, as Dave said, I'm going to be involved with continuing education, which has been something that's been very important to me. And so, we talked about the 3 pillars, and the pillar I'm going to be involved with is the education pillar. And picture me out in the building putting up a few walls and doing a little bit of work to get this thing going. But I guess I'm going to be the interim associate director of education. I'm on transitional retirement, so it's only going to be part-time. However, it seems like it's about full-time now. The other person up there is my cohort in this endeavor, Christopher Chamness. He was a CSU DVM graduate, actually Dr. Hackett's classmate, I believe. And he was president of Carl Stort's Veterinary Endoscopy US, and then became head of all global veterinary endoscopy. And one of the big things he's involved with is, he's not a salesperson, but education and training people so that they will buy their instruments. And so he is going to be one of our consultants, and he and I have been working for over the last year trying to develop a business plan and organization of the CE. So basically, Dave doesn't like organizational charts, but Christopher and I are only going to be temporary, so our goal is to get things going so that in the future we will have someone that will be a full-time associate director. Probably the two most important positions that we're looking at right now is assistant director of education, who hopefully will take over as associate, and the laboratory operating manager. And we're working on job descriptions, and I think those are going to be key individuals. We hope to have an anesthesiologist on with the group. We also will have administrative assistant with a concierge to try to help get people into our courses, and so it's as smooth running as possible. And then as we advance, maybe hourlies or maybe some vet techs and helping us out. So basically for our education, we have 2 40-seat classrooms. This is a tiered classroom, which you saw a picture of. We have the 150-seat auditorium. We will have a 12-station endoscopy or teaching stations in the laboratory, which will have 4K video monitors. We'll also have lights, tables that will go up and down, hydraulic tables for teaching. This is kind of the education side. I don't have a pointer here, but just showing you, we've got 2 classrooms. Right up here is a unisex locker room, and then we have classroom here and classroom here with the teaching laboratory right here. And we do also have coolers and freezers where we can keep cadavers, so we can use those for teaching, and so that'll facilitate things as well. We also have sort of a lunchroom, coffee bar right here where our participants can go in, have lunch, refreshments, and so forth as we're doing our courses. We also have 2 surgical laboratories. They will also be used for preclinical surgical research, but also some endoscopy training. This is one that is being given to us by Carl Stort's Veterinary Endoscopy. It is a complete integrated surgical room with capabilities of C-arm fluoroscopy. We hope to be doing some interventional radiology training as well, possibly in that room. Also on more the equine side, Arthrex has given us a complete integrated surgical room for arthroscopy and surgery, and so we hope to be very involved in training of arthroscopy as well. One of the things that I think is going to be very important is our ability to take things that we've shown in the lab or in the surgical rooms and put those into the classroom, or maybe up to the 150-seat lecture hall, but also to be able to take this through a production studio and send out things throughout the world. And we hope to have courses that we can, people can take online, or we will record courses that people can subscribe and continue on with our goal of continuing education. One of the other things that we're going to try to incorporate as well is virtual anatomy. And in our anatomy department here, there is this virtual reality that is very important in teaching anatomy. And one of the things that we find is when we're teaching some of these courses, maybe like an arthroscopy course or whatever, people don't remember the anatomy. And so we've met many times with the anatomy department about incorporating that into our TMI teaching as well. So hopefully we'll be able to integrate that as well. We do have a number of partners in education that are helping us out. Karl Storz Veterinary Endoscopy and Arthrex have been very kind in giving us tremendous amounts of endoscopic equipment. Medtronics is giving us surgical sealers, vessel sealers. Sound is a radiology company that we've been working with. We'll probably be doing some courses with them and so forth. We've had, we do give the American College of Veterinary Surgery courses here at CSU, and we will continue on. I think we are the place that they send their residents for training in minimally invasive surgery. AAEP, we're going to be doing courses on the equine side as well through the TMI. ACVIM, the internal medicine group, is very interested in giving courses here at CSU. Now they're giving courses out in Las Vegas, and the ACVM people just don't like to go to Las Vegas for their courses. Infinity Medical, they do interventional radiology courses, and I think we're going to have a course probably in January of next year with them. I've been working with Boston Scientific, and they're very interested in models, and we've developed, or they have developed a little stomach with 3D imaging or printing, and they are interested in working with us in developing models for training and maybe using training for models of ears, the respiratory system, and so forth. Next month, I'm going to be going down just outside of Boulder to 3D Systems, and they make training instrumentation to train MDs doing various types of surgical type endoscopic procedures, and hopefully we can maybe incorporate that and they can align with us. We were just out at the North American Veterinary Conference, and they're very interested in our TMI and the things that we can offer that they can't offer, and so we've had some very productive meetings in that regard. Our CSU annual conference, we think, will be run through the TMI, at least space-wise, and so that will hopefully not be this year, but the following year we'll be able to do that, both with the Veterinary Teaching Hospital and the TMI. Our vision basically is to offer minimally invasive surgical training, which is endoscopy, arthroscopy, all sorts of the endoscopy. We also hope to provide both not only endoscopic or surgical things, but also medical courses, interventional radiology. We hope to have specialized courses for groups following July. I've been talking with a big group out of China, and they want to bring like 36 Chinese veterinarians here for courses. We've done Japanese courses before, and so there's potential for a lot of international courses where we bring groups in to do training. We also think that there's a big area for endoscopic development and testing, not only in the veterinary world, but also the human world. And so if people want to come in and be able to test their instrumentation or to see how they work or whatever, or develop new instruments, we think we would be a place that we could do that as well. I might show you this picture up here at the right. This is one of our classrooms, and hopefully, I think we're still on the books for that, it's going to be a wraparound projection screen. So there'll be multiple projectors, and so you will have this big wraparound image, which is, very few places have that. We also would like to do, and we think this would be very financially beneficial, is a number of contract projects with associations, with private industry, and also in human medicine. And there are several places around the country that do, where a human company wants to bring in and teach people how to put a plate on a cadaver, that we would be able to provide that. And so we hope to also be in the human medicine aspect as well. And so our vision is that we can do all sorts of species. I'm not sure that we'll necessarily be doing many rhinos, but there is a big need for exotic training of exotic animals, even laboratory animal training. Believe it or not, people are doing colonoscopy on rats for colon cancer research, and they need to learn how to do that, and we think we can teach them how to do that. So we hope to be an all-species type training center. We're also working with CSU Online. This is a group within CSU that administers credit and non-credit courses. And we're going to be partnering with them. They're going to help us as far as some of our course advertising and our website course registration and so forth. Basically, what they're going to try to do is be able to get people to our front door, and then we'll be able to take care of them after that. We also believe that they would be able to help us as far as administering courses that we may want to put online, that they would do that through the CSU Online group. So our vision for this first year, starting in January, is probably right now on the books we have in the plans for someplace in the range of 25 or so endoscopy courses. Small animal courses, ACVS courses. We've got, tentatively, we're going to have some equine arthroscopy courses, as well as some courses with AEP. We believe that we're going to have interventional radiology courses, and then we think that possibly we're going to have some ACVIM courses, obviously the annual conference, some international courses, and I think we're probably at least talking with Arthrex that there will be a few human courses with MDs coming in on arthroscopy as well. So we've been working very diligently on a budget. Are we going to lose money? Are we going to break even or whatever? Are we going to make money? And we kind of project that we are going to be pretty close to breaking even that first year. At least that's our goal, at least on the books. So that's kind of a brief overview of what the education aspects are of the TMI. So I guess if people have questions, we can try to answer those. And
burning questions from the group?
That surgical room, a bunch of different layouts that can be designed, things like that. What is going to be, or is there any discussion around using that as a clinical skills lab for veterinary students? How does the veterinary curriculum, if it does at all, interface with TMI?
That's a good question. And currently now, and Eric, I don't know if Eric is here, Eric Monet has done some things in regards to elective courses for the junior students on endoscopy. where they attend morning lectures with DVMs that are taking CE courses. And then in the evening with cadavers, they learn different procedures. In talking with Boston Scientific, they're really keen on developing models. And one of the things that they're really keen on is, can we actually get a little research out of this and get our students and try to teach them with models, various types of endoscopy type procedures. So that is definitely a thought in that regard. Whether this will be a place for like classroom overflow, I'm not sure that that's necessarily in the vision of what we were going to do within TMI.
So some of the resources you're bringing in, particularly regulatory and biostats, will those be available for the greater South Campus to utilize as well? Biostats has always been a huge issue in finding something good for any of the departments around here. So.
Yeah, so I think that's a great question, and so certainly we're, the goal was realizing the need. So, we know we'll have to probably put a governor on the time for that particular person. So the goal is to have it available for the TMI participants, as well as if there's overflow for anybody else that could utilize it. We're working with the Department of Statistics to kind of come up with what that looks like. How do you have somebody that's not too overloaded that they get good work done, because it's always a trade-off, right?
Yeah,
if you have people that have 40 different projects, they can't really do 40 that good. What's 30? How do you prioritize those? Those are ongoing discussions. The good news for us, and we're leaning heavy on the Department of Stats, is they have a similar type collaboration with the Atmospheric Science Group. There's a group called Patch, and they've done the same sort of thing, and they're kind of working through the bugs in that. So we hope that they will have an ability to kind of give us some guidelines on how that person's time will be utilized. And I think people certainly that are part of the TMI, which again we're working on that inclusion criteria, will probably have first access to those folks, but there certainly won't be a limit. And I probably answer Brian's question that same way. We'll have a goal of what needs to get done in the TMI and the educational components that are going on, but certainly I would assume that there will be open times where the resources can be utilized for other things. So certainly the goal is to be inclusive in that respect. So what does that look like? I don't really know right now, but we're hoping to have that kind of plan and kind of scheduling in place for it. Did that answer your question? Great. Any other things that we can help with? Well, thanks so much for taking your time. There's still refreshments in the back. We'll hang out for a little bit if people have individual questions, and hope you have a good day.